Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to Women in Travel Thrive, Day 3 of our Day of Impact series. For those of you who I have not had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Noreen Henry. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Sojourn, a travel digital media company. And of course, I'm a very proud board member of Women in Travel Thrive. Today, I'm delighted to host our growth and development panel, which we are affectionately calling How to Be a Badass at Life and Work, where I will be joined by several amazing and accomplished women executives in travel who will share their experiences and advice on what has helped them achieve success and truly thrive as women leaders in our industry. But before we begin, let me explain what Thrive was built for. Women in Travel Thrive is a nonprofit organization whose primary goal is to make connections between women across the travel and the hospitality industry. And let's face it, after an unprecedented year of uncertainty in our industry, we all need a strong network of passionate, uplifting women now more than ever. So to get us started, here is a message from our founder and members of the Thrive Hive. Thank you to our Thrive Hive for the inspiration to kick us off. And now I'd like to introduce our panel of amazing badass women who will no doubt have great insights to share today and have fun along the way. First, our featured speaker and panel moderator is Carrie Febreze. She is the founder and chief reframer at Career Frame. And on the panel, I'm honored to be joined by Colleen Coulter, the head of travel at Facebook, Christy Goshu, chief marketing officer at Preferred Hotels and Resorts, and Cleo Knowles, Chief People Officer at Virgin Hotels. The way today's session is going to work is Carrie's going to start us off with a brief, insightful, motivational speech on what it means to be a badass at life and work. Now, Carrie gets real here, and she digs into how the outcomes of our performance all depends on how we choose to show up. So listen up, lean in, as she has some great lessons that we can all learn from. Then I will turn to our esteemed panel of women executives to share their real-world experiences of what they do to show up in life and at work with energy, how they understand their why, and how they use their strengths to step into their badassery every day. And also, to further engage you, our audience, we have enabled our chat, so please feel free to share your thoughts. Welcome our panelists, pop in any kind of comments, or even share your LinkedIn profile. If you have questions for Carrie or for the panelists, please use the Q&A box. And if you miss anything, don't worry, we are recording this and it will be available in social media. So with that intro, Carrie, take it away.
All right, awesome. So thank you so much, Noreen, and hello to everyone. So excited that you all are here and spending this time at Women in Travel Thrive. So as someone who grew up in the industry, it is an honor and privilege to speak with you all today and to moderate this panel of badass women. As Noreen said, I'm Carrie Fabrice. I am coming to you from Dallas, Texas, and I'm here today to share some insights with you around how to be a badass at work and life. Now, I'm wearing my bracelet, and if you look closely, it says badass. And so it takes one to know one, right? But it's a little reminder that I have every now and then to stay in my zone of badassery. A little bit more about me. I am the chief reframer and founder of Career Frame, but I did grow up in travel. I started working at Travelocity in 1998 and then worked for Google, for Sabre, for Travel Leaders Corporate, did a couple of startups along the way. In 2016, I started to pivot into the world of self-improvement and learning and development strictly from passion of wanting to help people elevate in their careers and at work. And so I put my freak flag up and said, I'm a coach, self-proclaimed. And since then, I have launched this business where I've worked with companies like Sojourn, Cyber Security, Axios Media, Valiant, American Airlines, Delta Dental, and several others. I coach C-level executives. I focus on leadership teams. I have my Reframe Mastery coaching program. I'm a certified Gallup StrengthsFinder coach. I'm also certified from the Center of Leadership Studies in their training situational leadership building leaders. And I absolutely love what I do. So I'm just going to dive in and we're just going to start talking first and foremost about what is a badass. Well, if you Google define badass, it tells you it's a tough, uncompromising, or intimidating person. I think that definition totally sucks. So my definition of a badass is someone who shows up, sets a new standard, is courageous, and does whatever it takes while considering others. A badass is someone who makes a positive impact and who believes that failure is actually a valuable lesson to learn from. Being a badass shows up at work and in life. And these days, especially in this remote world we've all been in, the lines are almost non-existent between the two. So I'm going to share with you some things to keep in mind around what you can focus on to bring your badassery to a team, whether you're working on one now or you are working your way towards joining a team. So you can focus on these things that will keep yourself in a badass zone at work and in life. So first, I'm going to share a framework with you to keep in mind when you're at work. And they apply in life too, but what I'm going to share is based on Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So if you've heard of this amazing book, then great. If you haven't, it's an awesome book. And I actually do these 5 Dysfunctions of a Team trainings with teams, and it's all about alignment. But the first thing, I'm going to walk you through these 5 points. So this is about how you can contribute to being a badass on a badass team. All right. So the first thing is you have to build trust. So we all have different definitions of trust. So I'm going to give us one that we can all think about from the same place. And trust is a firm belief in the reliability, the truth, the ability or strength of someone or something. Now, here's the thing. Trust all starts with vulnerability. Okay, so now let me give you a definition of vulnerability. The quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. No wonder nobody wants to be vulnerable. That sucks too, right? But here's the thing. Without trust, you're going to have no foundation for a team that is functioning, high-performing, aligned, or badass. And you're not going to have trust without vulnerability. So it's badass to be vulnerable, which sounds scary, but be vulnerable so you can build trust one-on-one with someone, again, at work or in life. The second thing is to be a badass at mastering conflict. Okay, so now this is not about fighting, getting ugly, being destructive. This is about the ability to have healthy, constructive debate and discussion. Now, we women tend to be higher harmony people. We don't like conflict, so we don't speak up. And therefore, we don't allow our voices to be heard. And sometimes that's from a place of fear of that getting vulnerable, having a backlash, right? But it's badass to speak up and be heard. It's badass to give space for differing opinions and point of view and give respect to discuss all sides. So be that person to lead that as well as speak up. And here's the thing. Mastering conflict can only happen when trust is present. So again, we got to get vulnerable. So the third thing is commitment. So when a badass commits, they are embracing 2 related concepts, buy-in and clarity. Now, buy-in is allowing everyone to speak up and get on the same page. What am I buying into? Clarity is being clear on what everyone's getting aligned on. You want to avoid confusion, frustration, assumptions. If you assume, maybe it makes an ass out of you and me, not a badass out of you and me. That doesn't flow. But it's badass to know what you're committing to so you can buy in and be clear on your contribution to a cause. Fourth thing, embrace accountability. This is around the willingness to remind others and be reminded by others when they or you are not living up to performance standards. And this is modeled by the leader of a team. So either you're a leader or you have a leader. The leader is the one that sets this stage and role models this. And see, here's the thing, at work, most organizations and leaders hold people accountable for results, especially if you're on a sales team, but they have to hold people accountable for behavior as well. Okay, this behavior almost always precedes results. And here's another thing with accountability. Holding back and not giving feedback to a peer, positive or negative, is actually letting that person down. I can give a whole other speech on how to give feedback to someone who doesn't want it, gets defensive, etc. But I'm here talking about you and how you can be that badass contributing to accountability on a team. It takes courage to be a well-meaning and caring teammate or partner that steps into discomfort to tell someone something they need to hear, not that they want to hear. Okay, a little pain, a lot of gain. So give each other permission to hold each other accountable and call each other out if someone is not carrying their weight. We all have those blind spots. The fifth thing is results. So it's badass to be clear on how you are tracking and measuring results. You want to avoid distractions like individual career advancement, compensation, ego. Because when you get distracted by all these things, you're basically just ensuring that you're broadcasting to everybody else you're more important than they are. Okay, so to recap, what you need to have and how you need to be for a badass to show up at work is trust. You got to build that trust and get vulnerable. You've got to master conflict. Can't do that without trust. You've got to be committed. It's understanding what you're buying into, being clear. It's embracing accountability. It's holding each other to certain standards, and it's results. It's checking that ego at the door and aligning on how you're measuring success, not only just the numbers, but that behavior as well. So I've now talked about how you can be a badass at work. Let's talk more specifically about you. Something important that I want all of us to understand, and I have to remind myself of this a lot, is at work and in life, you are 100% responsible for what you say, what you do, what you think, what you feel, period. Now, if you have heard of Jack Canfield and his amazing book, Success Principles, if you don't have it, please immediately go to Amazon after this presentation and buy it. Chapter 1 is this: you are 100% responsible for yourself. Being a badass is 100% up to you. Okay, you cannot and you will not control another human being's feelings. You can influence them, but you're not going to control another person. So if you're ever in a situation where you're spending time wishing and hoping that a person would just do what you said, is only going to frustrate you and waste energy. Those of us with young children, we get this. We know what this means, okay? When we're triggered by something or someone and we can't control them, that trigger is basically putting up a mirror, showing us something that we do not have, showing us how we are not acting, showing us something we are not taking action on, and we do not like it. So we think it's the other person's fault. We project, we vomit our emotions onto them versus looking in the mirror and taking that 100% ownership, which is badass to do. So we yell at them because how dare they say or do or think something different than what I would say, do, or think, but you can only control you. Here's a couple things about how not to be a badass. If you want to not be a badass, be ego driven, okay? The bigger the ego, little side note, the bigger the ego, the bigger the insecurity. We all know those people who walk around and like, I'm so badass and blah, blah, blah. And we're like, you're really not. They're overcompensating for their immense insecurity. So now we can look at those people and go, I feel really sorry for you, actually. But some other ways to not be badass is to be tone deaf, to not listen and be engaged into what's going on around you. Manipulative, narrow or closed-minded, limited mindsets, which we're all guilty of having in some form or fashion, not badass. You don't want to be focused on yourself only. Now, caveat here, I'm all about self-care. We do need to put our masks on first before assisting others, okay? But there's a group environment, it's not all about you. You don't want to be late, you don't want to be unprepared, you don't communicate, you would expect everyone to read your mind, you don't discuss the why. All those things are not badass. And I want to touch on why for a second, okay? So when you get certified by Gallup as a coach, they tell you never ask why. I ask why all the time. I'm that pain in the ass that will ask you why. So you're like, please stop asking me why. But the reason I do it is because I want to help whoever I'm working with get to the root of the issue. I have a client who hates the word why. Anytime someone asks her why, she gets triggered. She immediately assumes negative intent. So I ask her why all the time because I want to get her uncomfortable. Why is simply seeking to know more. Why is digging deep. We are so focused on the what and the how. We almost always jump over the why, but the why is the purpose, the meaning, the reason. I heard someone once say, if you don't cry, you ain't got your why. So you just keep digging. And when you're like, oh my God, that's it. That's the why. But why is crucial to understanding yourself better, unpacking limiting beliefs. It can help you dig through any issue to get to the root so you can address or heal whatever's there. And it's crucial to communicate with others. So you want to offer the why to people or expect them to ask for more information. Because here's a little something about why. By default, how do most people, including ourselves, react when someone asks us why? We get defensive. Who are you questioning me, right? So it's all about tone and presentation of asking why. If someone tells you something and you go, why? How do you think they're going to act, right? But if you're like, well, okay, so I genuinely want to understand, why do you feel that way? Like, tell me. Very different type of conversation. So understanding the why is badass, and it helps you stay in your zone of badassery. Now, there's one thing that each of you must have to make any of what I've shared so far work for you in order to be a badass and stay in that badassery zone, and that's energy. Okay, without energy, you literally have nothing. How many of us women are like, by the end of every day, I am so exhausted? How many of our moms in this last year triple exhausted? So our energy is like, and without energy, you literally have nothing, okay? There's an amazing author. He's also a speaker guru, Brendan Burchard. He has an amazing book called High Performing Habits. I got my hand on this book a couple years ago. I loved it so much. When I was at Travel Leaders Corporate, I had my team do a book review around it, book club around it, and then I created a training around it. So I can basically be brought into a company and say, let's go through these high performing habits and basically teach this book in a short workshop to teams. But he talks about the 6 high performing habits, which are clarity, energy, influence, productivity, necessity, and courage. Now, if you think about it, so like you have low energy, you're gonna be tired. And if you're tired, you might get emotional. And if you're emotional, you're probably gonna be irrational. And when we're irrational, we make not awesome choices. And therefore, we're not in a badass zone. If we're tired, we're not clear. If we're tired, how are we gonna influence people? If we're tired, we're probably not gonna be super productive. So you get where I'm going with this, okay? Energy is everything. And one of my all-time favorite quotes, it does happen to be a Tony Robbins quote. Love him, hate him, think he has big teeth, don't know who he is. It's the most amazing quote. And it's where focus goes, energy flows. You must have energy to be a high performer, and how, what, and why you focus on what you do determines your energy output and what you get back. You attract everything that matches your energetic vibration. You're like, vibrating at a low frequency, and then you wonder why everything sucks around you. That's why. If you're, positive and like, I'm in the zone, guess what? All this awesome stuff shows up. So if you don't get energy, this is the part where Noreen said, Carrie keeps it real. If you don't get energy from what you do personally and professionally, and there's no passion, you should stop and ask yourself, why not? No energy, no awesome output, or mediocre output at work and life. And I don't know about you, I don't want to be mediocre at anything. So if you're generally happy, but you're still low on energy, you want to change your state. Okay, so what I mean by this is there's 3 ways to change your state. There's physiology, focus, and language. So with physiology, it's movement, it's Wonder Woman pose, it's victory pose, it's me standing up while I do my speech versus sitting down. There's focus. It's, are you in the head or are you in the heart? In the head, you're dead. In the heart, you're smart. So what are you focusing on? And then it's that language that's going through this lizard a-hole up here that just self-talk, self-talk, self-talks. Here's something I heard the other day, and it's interesting because I coach people on this, but when Oprah Winfrey said it, it just sounded so much more magnificent. Whatever follows the words, I am, is what you're inviting into your life. I am tired. I am frustrated. I'm pissed off. I'm hurt. I'm happy. I'm successful. I'm a badass, right? So it's whatever. So kind of watch that language. You change your words, you change your life. And then you're constantly reframing for the possibility. When I talk about reframe mastery, which is my coaching program, it's all about turning those negative thoughts into positive action. And I mean, when I'm talking about energy, I mean all types of energy. I mean, get your physical energy up, your mental energy up, your emotional energy up, your spiritual energy up. It's all of it. Because when you're in the right state of energy, you are in the badass zone. Okay. And to be a badass and stay badass, you must be curious and stay curious. I loved all of the things that all the women in that video were saying. I was like, that's in my speech. That's in my speech. That's in my speech. This is great. If you're not growing, you're dying. Okay. Anything on this planet, the minute it stops growing, it starts the dying process. So when we're growing, we're always going to be out of our comfort zones. You want to stay uncomfortable. One of the women said that in the video. And I was like, yes, find something every day to learn, to explore, to dive into. And here's also another thing to kind of program in here. If you say you can't, you're actually saying you won't. Now, it took me about a year to consciously, actively practice this. And I have can't out of my vocabulary, I'd say about 97% of the time. And I started catching myself like, man, I canting everywhere. But I won't. So for example, I had a really awesome fun date night with my husband last night. It was really tough to get up this morning. I'm like, I can't get out of bed. Okay, I'm basically saying I won't get out of bed. Well, I have this amazing speech opportunity with Women in Travel Thrive. So I really do need to get out of bed. Okay, I will get out of bed. So my can't turned into I will. So if you say you can't, you say you won't. And when you change that in your brain, what you're trying to not do all of a sudden takes on a very different meaning. Now, as a strengths coach, as I mentioned, I am a certified Gallup Strengths Finder coach. So I'm super passionate about strengths. I won't not talk about them here. Strengths are your superpowers. Okay. And when you focus on your strengths, you're focusing on what you do right, not what you do wrong. Can't tell you how many workshops I do with teams, and there are 34 talents in Strengths Finder. And then when someone unlocks their full report, they're like, where am I awesome? Where do I suck? Straight down to what is my biggest weakness, right? We all have weaknesses or non-strengths. And sure, there's some areas that we want to improve in and get better at, but there's just some areas where you just got to let it go. And you got to manage the fact that some things are simply not in my wheelhouse and will be uncomfortable for me to use. The key to success is to fully understand how to apply your natural talents and your strengths in everyday life. Now, here's a little gauge for you to understand your strengths and when you're using them, when you're not being allowed to use them, or when you're being asked to do something that is not a talent. Okay. So you're using and playing to your strengths when what you're doing gives you energy. Okay. You're in the flow, you're in your zone of genius. Time doesn't exist. You'll know you're not being able to use a strength when you are pissed off and frustrated. Okay. It means you're hitting a wall. I want to do this. I'm super great at it. And someone is in my way, or something is in my way. This is a great gauge. If you're in a role and you're frustrated, you probably need to unpack that. What are you not being able to do? Okay. And then if you're not currently working and you're looking for something, look for something that's going to allow you to play to your natural talents. All right. Now here's how to spot a non-strength. Okay. You'll know you're being asked to use a strength that you do not naturally have when you're uncomfortable. So there's pissed off, frustrated, and there's uncomfortable. Okay. Now you can still do what's asked of you. It's just going to be painful. And it might take you 10 times longer to accomplish it. okay? And it's going to be working harder, not smarter. Strengths is all about communication, okay? So it's it's literally offering this up. This is what I'm great at. This is what I'm not great at. This is what gives me energy. And this is what drains me, quite frankly, right? So you want to have a dialogue about who you are, how you show up, how that badass in you shows up. You want to talk with your team, with leaders, if you're interviewing, with your friends, your spouse, your partner, etc. Okay, because what's badass is to talk with people, not about people. If you're someone that goes to someone else and says, hey, can you relay all of this information about this person to that person? That's not badass. You need to go straight to that person and talk with them, okay? Now, I'm gonna start winding things down here. If my talk with you so far has you confirming that you are in fact a badass, well, badass, that's awesome, keep going. But if you're sitting here saying, well, crap, I'm not as badass as I thought, well, then it's just time to take some massive action. It's, to truly change a behavior, first of all, takes time, okay? Nothing is blink and it's done. You got to give yourself time. You got to take that massive action. You got to commit and you have to practice. Decide, move forward, have consistent, active, conscious practice of what you say, do, and think. You all heard me say can't, and then you saw me and you heard me immediately say won't. Okay, so that, again, you practice this trigger to get better and you're constantly reframing along the way. So as I wrap up here, just to summarize, when you are part of a team, badasses build trust, they manage conflict, they have commitment, they embrace accountability, they drive results behaviorally. In general, keep their energy high. Where focus goes, energy flows. Ask why to yourself and to others. Remember, if you don't cry, you ain't got your why. Maintain a growth mindset, stay curious, and use your strengths, because being a badass is learning to thrive, not just survive. And each one of you has this badassery inside of you. So show your badassery. I actually have those exact words in hot pink on my wall right here, so I can just remind myself every day. So the travel industry is counting on all of you to show your badassery. So thank you for listening. And now I'm going to transition us back over to Noreen so we can dive in to this amazing panel of badass women and have some awesome discussion. So Noreen, back over to you.
Wow, Carrie, that was badass. Okay, that was awesome. Talk about playing to your strengths. I've had the pleasure of knowing Carrie for 20 some years, we'll just say, in the industry, and you do an amazing job here, and you clearly are playing to your strengths. So we're going to learn from all of this. And I don't know if you've had a chance to see any of the chat, Carrie, but I love it. There's lots of engagement going on. And the big advice from everyone is every Monday morning, we're just going to rewatch your presentation here so that we get all motivated for the week. All right.
Great. Love it.
All right. So we are going to transition to the panel now. So I want to remind the audience to submit your questions in the Q&A box, either for Carrie for her speech and any kind of advice you want on how you address these, or to the panelists. So this session is for all of you. So we encourage you to be part of the dialogue. To get us started, Carrie is going to moderate a couple questions and then we'll jump to the Q&A. Carrie, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So Christy, Colleen, Cleo, so excited that the three of you badasses are here. I am going to ask each of you a question, and then, as we have been preparing for this, please just be interactive and jump in. I am going to start with Christy, if that's okay. And Christy, I would love to have you share with all of us what is badass, or what does being a badass mean to you? And perhaps more specifically, as a woman in travel, what say you?
Oh, great question. And might I just add on, by the way, before I even answer that, I have to say, you did such an excellent job there. I have 2 pages of notes in front of me. And I as you close, I thought I need a little Carrie Fabrice on my shoulder every day. So that, you're just there. You're always
bobblehead,
there.
a little Carrie bobblehead.
Or in my pocket, which is wonderful. So well done. Badass. I think it's an interesting word or choice of words, isn't it? That's often misconstrued. But in my mind, it's very much what I think you've already covered, which is, for me, it's about helping people see their potential by moving them to a place of slight discomfort, but in the nicest possible way. Because when we do that, we see the world through a different lens, or we might just sort of see the lens shift slightly, and that allows people to uncover more potential, to try new things. And when we do that, we grow. So in my world, it's really about helping people to move to that place of slight discomfort. But what's interesting is over the course of my career, and I've thought about and reflected a lot on this and do every day, how do people perceive me as I go through my career journey? Is that, could they misconstrue that behavior in some way, shape or form?
Sure.
And one thought I wanted to share actually with everybody today, and also with you, because I value your feedback on this point, is I often look at where are the friction points in my own career and life? Where have they been? Who have they been with? And why? So it comes back to that word, why. And there's been some observations over the course of my career. And through that, I asked for feedback, because I do believe in growth mindsets. And you use the term higher harmony. As women, we often seek to find higher harmony, or we're associated as being the harmonious individuals. I do not see myself like that, personally. So anyway, along the course, I've had these conversations. And one day I was given some feedback, which I thought was very interesting and very interesting, well, a very curious choice of words. And then this particular person said to me, you know, Christy, perhaps you unnerve people. And I stopped, I went, wow, okay, that's interesting choice of words. And,
see, and I'm like, mirror, projecting. That's what I hear. I'm like, maybe you unnerve people and you just want to accuse me of doing it.
And it was coming from a very good place, I have to say, in that conversation, and maybe a couple of glasses of Pinot into the evening.
Oh,
but
yeah.
you know, we often
truth.
It was
speaking their truth.
Right. So, and in that conversation, I said, well, my response was, okay, that's really good for me to know. Help me understand that, what is meant by that. And then as we unfolded, unpacked that statement, it was, well, you know, you're a smart woman and perhaps others feel intimidated by that. So I paused there, because harmony, is that a framework of reference that others think I should fit? I don't fit. Does that then push me outside of it? So anyway, I'm going to pause and leave that with you for a moment, because I think I'm sure others have had similar examples.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a very valid point to make, because, you know, I've done this speech many times and people are like, well, so if I'm going to be a badass, what if I get like criticized because I'm showing up how I think it's badass, but if the other person is like rejecting it, I get a little like this, because part of me is like what I just said. I'm like, well, that says a lot about the other person. Okay. But at the same time, you don't want to be the one walking around that everyone is perceiving a certain way. I am curious. You share to your comfort level, knowing that there's, you know, hundreds of people watching. But I'm curious of the gender. Was this a woman or a man that said this to you?
And I don't mind answering this. So the conversation was between myself and another female. And the context of the conversation was referring to relationships with the opposite gender.
Okay, so that's what I was going to kind of like. I was kind of curious, like how you think about being a badass differs between a female being a badass and how that's perceived by other females or by men, and you know, what does it mean to be a badass man? Any thoughts on that?
I'm actually to throw that one back to the people who might be listening today, because I think that would be a great one to have people put into the chat. But I do definitely think that there's some very real differences there, and because you use that term harmonious or harmony, that's one example. But then there's also framework of reference. We are socialized in certain ways, and that socialization is going to vary across countries, regions, parts of the world, cultures. And those are all factors that we have to take into consideration as we manage our own behavior and as we deliver messages to others, other audiences. But there's also factors, as you say, that are a mirror that we have to be prepared for. So part of this conversation, I think, is showing us what that could look like so that we can navigate it. Because we can't change, I think you talked about it, we can't change the perspective of others, but
Right.
to know what they might see or hear, to
Totally.
then reframe ourselves
Exactly. Yes.
is a very important skill set.
All about the reframe, and you know, it is badass to consider others. Like I was saying in my definition, not what you Google and find out. My definition is you do all these things, but you do have to consider others. And it sounds like you handled that situation beautifully and totally badass. And you know, knowing you like I've known you, I would have expected nothing less. Let me toss out another question, and it kind of goes along the lines of this whole, you know, male, female. And I know that we've got some amazing badass men watching this today and how supportive they are of this Women in Travel Thrive. But it seems like we women like often question our capabilities, and we feel that we need to, like, if we want to go to the next role or get promoted or raise our hand for a big project, that we have to meet all of the qualifications, where men don't worry about that. Like, we worry about that as females, but it doesn't seem like men really worry about this. Do any of you have some thoughts on that one? Any comments?
I'm happy to chime in a bit, and
Yeah.
thank you so much for this conversation. I'm enjoying it so much.
Yeah.
And I'm sure all of us are familiar with the data behind that statement, which is that women only apply to a role if they meet 100% of the qualifications, but often men will apply if they meet 60% of the qualifications. And so one, I think it's important to remind yourself of that. So remind yourself, if you find yourself pausing, saying like, would other people be pausing in the same way that I'm pausing? But two, I really encourage everyone to think about reframing their experience and not trying to match it apples to apples with the specific qualification. So I'll give an example that I was in a chief of staff role and then looking to move into the sales organization at Facebook. And very frankly, I did not meet the specific qualifications of that sales role. And it took me reframing my past experience, which serving as a chief of staff internally at Facebook, I was doing selling every single day, selling ideas to stakeholders. And so once I really grasped that and was able to reframe my stories to fit in to the more of the job description, like the behaviors that I would be following, I certainly gained a lot more confidence applying, and then ultimately got the role. So one, check yourself, remind yourself that not everyone else is going to pause, and then two, reframe and find ways to translate that past experience.
Yeah, and I think it's also kind of back to where the world I live in of strengths. It's if you've got strengths, you don't have to hit all of the qualifications, but if you have certain strengths that will allow you to not only meet some, but bring some other new perspective to the role, like lean into that. And that's why, again, I always want to encourage people to just know where you're strong, because that will set you up for success. And it will also guide you away from something where you might be setting yourself up for failure. But I love that answer, Colleen. That was great. While I have you, I'd like to ask you another question if I can.
Sure.
Curious, so kind of going back to something that I talk a lot about in my speech is around energy. So curious if you'll share with everybody what techniques and strategies you have for getting your energy up so you can get in and stay in your zone of badassery at Facebook and beyond.
Sure. So much of what you share resonated, and it's certainly things that I subscribe to. I really think about the physical aspect and then the mental and emotional aspect. On the physical aspect, I cannot advocate for sleep enough. I will say that in college, early in my career, I thought the ability to survive on little sleep was my superpower, and I leaned into that real hard. And then actually fittingly read the book Thrive by Arianna Huffington and learned that I was literally taking years off my life with my sleep habits. And now I'm committed to 7 hours minimum every single day. And if I'm still working and gonna miss that 7 hour window, the laptop shuts and the alarm the next day is shifted to get that 7 hours. The other aspect of physical is just exercise. I personally love exercise. I gain a ton of energy from it. I have a newborn at home now, so I've now subscribed to the Peloton because I can do it in my house. Before I was a Orange Theory fitness girl, and that was just my commitment and my habit every single morning. On the mental and emotional side, so much that I focus on is focusing on what I can control and letting
Yep.
go of what I can't control. Because to your energy point,
Bravo. Yep.
it's just wasted energy to be ruminating too much on what I can't control. And certainly over the past year, there has been so much that we can't control. And so within my team, that's been a huge focus of always talking about what can we control in this world of uncertainty and chaos. And I highly encourage everyone to just start every morning with that breakdown of, okay, over the next, I control.
Oh no, okay.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. I was like, no, don't leave.
The last piece I'll just quickly hit on for mental and emotional is bringing optimism. So I don't mean to be blindly optimistic or naively optimistic, but really working to find the opportunity in the challenge. And that optimism is going to breed positive energy around you. Other people are going to be that much more excited to work with you. And you talked about the domino effect.
Yep. No, something that is also badass is practicing gratitude. Okay. Because we all have a ridiculous amount to be grateful for. To your point, it is good to be positive because we are actually very negative beings. American Psychology Association says we have between 50 and 80,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of them are negative. That sucks, right?
Yep.
So like bring in the positive. And I will tell you, if you have a hard time with optimism, call Noreen Henry. She's one of the most positive, happy people I've ever met. And so, yeah, it's finding those positivity people that can get you up. So I love that. And I always encourage people 4 things for getting your energy up: eat, sleep, move, meditate. Okay. So that's another thing is, as women, well, all of us, again, everybody watching, male, female, we're all achievers in this country. And we are in the world, let's just say, because we may have a global audience here. I should know that, and I don't, but we are all, it's hard for us to sit still. We're just always going, moving, drive. And when we sit still for a little bit, everything just calms down. You get your heart rate down, the brain releases endorphins, you naturally calm down. So we all need to do those things: eat, sleep, move, meditate. Awesome. Thanks, Colleen. I'm going to move to Cleo. Cleo, I'd like to ask you a question, if that's okay. So talked a lot about the why. Spent a good amount of that in my speech, and all the people that I coach, this is the one thing that comes up the most, because a lot of people are just so busy telling everybody what to do versus asking. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts around discussing the why in the workplace specifically, and kind of knowing that most people get defensive when they're asked? How does why show up for you?
So I'm a huge fan of Simon Sinek's work on finding your why, and all of his online courses they created during COVID, and I've used a lot of those with my team. I think this is actually where, as women, though, we do actually kind of have the edge on men. And I know it's sometimes a bit taboo to talk about it, but because women tend to be more empathetic, I think that it's easier sometimes for us to ask the why questions, because we're genuinely trying to understand, what's motivating this individual? What are the hidden stories that we're not aware of? And I see too many of, the men that I work with kind of go through life just assuming that they can just tell people to do things and it'll get done. But if they're not explaining the why either, then it's really hard to motivate a team. And I do think that, the way evolution has raised women to be the caretakers, when we're in the workplace, I'm not saying that we need to be the caretakers of the team, but I do think that just allows us to be a little bit more empathetic to what our teams need to understand from us, and then what we need to understand from them if someone is struggling or if they're not meeting deadlines. And asking that question, as you said, it's not enough to just say why once, but you have to dig deeper. So you have to say, well, why is this an issue? And they might say, oh, well, I'm just really busy. Okay, well, why are you really busy? You have to keep digging down into the layers. So it's almost like the unpeeling of the onion to get down.
Totally.
You discover there's actually something going on you had no idea about, but by continuing to kind of press in a sensitive way, you're able to get there. And again, the converse of that also being explaining the why of why we're doing things. I still see too much of this top-down dictatorial chain of command leadership style. And I'm constantly amazed that there's still people leading in that way in this world. But unfortunately, you know, there's still a generation that thinks that they just need to say something and people just need to do it and they don't have to explain anything behind it. And it just isn't the way that particularly the newer generations entering the workforce want to be led. You know, I have the great pleasure of working with an intern who's in his early 20s, and it's so refreshing to just see their perspective of the workplace as opposed to, you know, some of the longer term employees, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah. I will say that I'm working with several amazing organizations who have a lot of young employees in their 20s and 30s. And from a strengths perspective, there are two themes. There's consistency and there's individualization. Okay, consistency is one for all, one rule, fairness, balance, compliance. Individualization is, no, we could probably make some exceptions. You know, we need to look at the individual and their situation. I am noticing in the younger age-driven organizations, individualization is coming up like mad.
Yeah.
And in the organizations I work with where they're, you know, they're older, it's consistency. It's so interesting. But like what you're talking about is, you know, it's the why is understanding that buy-in. What am I buying into? Tell me why I'm doing this so I know what to buy into, that I'm getting clarity on it. And if anyone watching has that leader that Cleo talked about that just wants to dictate and tell, that's when you can set it up to ask the why. And that delivery is super important so that person doesn't bite your head off. But it's, hey, awesome, I hear you. Want to make sure, you know, buying in, I'm clear. Can you just give me some more information around the why we're doing this, why I need to, you know, do this? Because I genuinely want to understand so I can hit the ground running. It's all about how you position it. But that was
and
awesome.
I think that ties into, you know, sort of the new focus on purpose-driven companies. So, you know, it can be very difficult in our industry in hospitality to have every teammate understand the value they're adding, why they're there, why choose us over another company. And so, you know, at Virgin Hotels, we've created something that's very culture driven because, you know, if teammates believe in what we're trying to do as the broader message and understand how their role ties into that, you're going to have much more dedicated teammates than somebody who's just looking for a paycheck coming in, you know.
Absolutely.
So I think why from an organizational perspective and then down to the individual perspective is just critical in today's world and for the future.
Yeah, no, I love that. And, you know, we want to encourage everybody, if you do not understand the purpose of the company you're working with or the company that you're hoping to go work with, you probably may not want to spend energy on that company. Okay, you need to be aligned with the purpose so you can play to your strengths, you can be engaged, you can show up and be that badass. That's always the harsh reality that people don't love hearing from me. It's like, you're unhappy, then leave. Like, it's okay. Like, don't be there and be unhappy because everybody sees it. Like, just want to put yourself in a place where you can be successful. Well, I'm kind of watching the clock. And so Noreen, I thought I'd pass it to you just to see if we have any questions from the chat that people would ask.
So lots of comments coming in, lots of questions. So let me throw a couple of these out at you, and I might comment a little bit on some of these. What the heck?
Perfect.
So one of the questions that came in is, what about your mentality that has changed since your very first paying job? What shifts have you experienced as you rose through the ranks? When I saw this one coming in, so I've been in the industry a really long time. So it was different when I joined, like everything was very male dominated. And so when I started, I wanted to be one of the guys. Like, I worked really hard to try and be one of the guys and not be a threat. And Carrie, you'll know this, did I smoke cigars with the guys at night because I wanted to be at the table where they were making decisions? I did do those things.
Yeah.
But as I progressed, I got more confidence in being a woman and being authentic to who I am and being authentic to what my leadership style is. And now I'm very proud to be one of the women and very proud to find ways to pay it back for women in our industry and to be able to help people. And now I want to be part of the women's group. So a lot of that has changed. I'm optimistic that the environment is a bit different for women entering today than it was before, but there's still a long ways to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, so let me throw that out to the rest of you guys. What changes have you seen? Particularly those of you who are younger than me. What have you seen?
I'd love to comment on that one. And I love that you said authenticity, because that's like that 100% ownership of who you are. Something that has changed for me, and people that have just known me the past couple of years are like, I can't imagine you any other way, Carrie, because I'm pretty no bullshit. Like, you will always know what I'm thinking, because I will tell you. Back in the day, I was one of those people that might not speak up. And I still see this a lot in companies I work with, the whole anonymous feedback. You will know the feedback came from me, right? So there's no like more anonymous. And again, this kind of goes back to the vulnerability piece, that I think that the mentality around owning your comments, owning your feelings, because if you got to be anonymous, why are you saying it? Right. So that's something that's really changed for me, and kind of pouring into that authenticity. Like, I am going to be real. I'm not for everybody. My style is not for everybody. That is 1000% okay, because I'm going to rock it with the people who do love my style. But it's more of just like that authenticity of owning my comments. Again, what I feel, what I say, what I do, what I think, and just stepping into that. That's a big one that's changed for me since 1998 when I stepped into travel. Anybody else have a comment?
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in here, because I think these are the kinds of conversations that are really very inspiring, to see the depth and breadth of what everybody's been through. But I look back on my journey, and I feel as though when I first came into the workforce, I felt there was a need to perform against a criteria that was set. Maybe that was back in the day when job descriptions really mattered, or people really placed huge value on them. So as I've gone through the last 20 plus years, maybe I've been on a journey towards that individualism that we're seeing here, or that individualization, as I've had the privilege to work with different types of people along the way. And what I realized was I needed to be in organizations that would enable, and I wanted to be able to push the box, push the sides out, take them away. And I think that's also a realization of where your strengths are as you mature and go through your career, and how you can leverage those strengths to change. Maybe it is that job description, or it is that, removing the edges of that box, but then wanting to do that for other people. So moving from being the person who performs to the person who enables, to set other people free so that they can fly. Because there's something beautiful about seeing others really enjoy what they do and succeed. So, I mean, that's, my viewpoints on that. That's a great question, by the way, whoever asked.
Yeah, it is. And I love what you just said. I mean, that's why I pivoted to doing what I do, because I'm all about helping people elevate to who they want to be and how to help them get out of their own way to do it. It's so gratifying when I see people do that. It's awesome. So, any other questions?
I'll add
one more that came in here. Oh, I'm sorry, Colleen. Go ahead, Anna.
just a quick response to the question would be, I think I have over time taken a much longer time horizon on my career, really embracing that, hey, I'm probably going to be working for 45 years. There's going to be many different seasons to my career. Whereas early on, and this comes back to the ego point that you were making, Carrie, early on, I was so focused on like the promotion timeline. And if there was a failure, oh no, it's going to define my entire career. Yeah. And I think as I've progressed in my career, to your point, those failures are seen as opportunities and ways to grow, and thinking about, okay, moving into new roles. Maybe it's a step back in level, but what new opportunity does that provide me, which is going to open up the next season of my career? Really just shifting to take a much longer time horizon.
Love that.
Yeah.
I coach a founder of a nonprofit, and she goes around with her team talking about failing so hard. And everyone's like, okay, how did you fail so hard? And someone puts it out and they're like, oh, that must have sucked, but that hurt. Okay, so what did you do about it? And I was like, that's amazing. Like, what a great way to talk about failures, right?
Yep.
Is turning them into lessons. So that's great.
Yeah, like failure doesn't define you. It's what you learn from it. And how
Totally.
do you take that into the next role and go, okay, I'm not going to make that mistake again. And how do I do it? And I have found, even in the interviews, people want to understand, where have you failed? Like, they They want to know you've made mistakes and that you've learned from them. So don't hide from them. It's okay to lean into that. All right, we're getting close to the end of our time here. So I'm going to throw one more question out to all of you so that everybody answers this one. What is your one piece of advice that you would give to women in travel to help them be a badass at life and work? Cleo, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Thanks, Noreen. It's interesting. I saw in the question and answers or Q&A actually that someone asked, how do you be badass without being perceived as a bitch? Excuse my language.
Great question.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, it is difficult, and it's obviously unfair that we even have to ask that question because we all know that nobody asks men that, anyway. And I think the thing is, you just have to be true to yourself. And there will be days where people may perceive you in that manner. And there will be days where people may say things behind your back that you wouldn't appreciate it if you heard it to your face, etc. But I think that we just all need to accept that as long as we're true to who we are and we know our why, going back to that, and why we're doing what we do, and that we know that we're doing it with the best interests at heart, I think that that's ultimately what truly matters. And I don't think there's an easy way to overcome labels in today's society. We're seeing a lot of shifts, but I think that one's going to take longer than some others to move away from. But look at the fact of just this amazing panel of women that we have here today, and where everyone is in their careers and what we've been able to accomplish, which maybe 30 or 40 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to pull together a group of women like this. So we're making progress. And as long as we hold true to that and believe in that, I think we shouldn't worry about what labels other people put on us.
Fabulous advice. Awesome.
Love that.
Christy, what's your one piece of advice?
Yeah. I was going to say what she said. Fantastic. Well done, Cleo. Love it. More of that. I'm just going to add on two other things, which is I often hear the term pride of ownership and pride of this, pride of that. I think pride of purpose is really important. We all want to feel proud of what we do every day, come to work, be happy. And the other is know your worth. Know your worth. Don't ever second guess. And I've had people over the years say to me, people who are very close to me, "Ooh, do you really think you should ask for that?" That those shouldn't be questions that we even entertain. You have to know you have to know your value, have the confidence to go forward and ask for it, and be ready to deliver against it as well.
So true. Very insightful. Colleen, what's your piece of advice?
Mine would be dream big. So at Facebook, we do a lot of vision writing. And when we write our vision, we're asked to look 1 year out and write our vision in the past tense. So as if you already accomplished it. And it's extremely powerful because you just let go of all of those I can't things, to Carrie's point, and write it as if you accomplished it. And that has always enabled us to dream really big and set really bold goals. So certainly encourage everyone joining today to take some time this weekend maybe and write your vision of 1 year out. What have you done personally and professionally?
Such a great piece of advice and things that we should all do. All right, Carrie, bring us home.
What Cleo said, what Christy said, what Colleen said, what Noreen said, and what I would add on that is every single one of us is exactly where we are supposed to be right now. Okay, so if you're like, I don't want to be where I am right now, you're supposed to be there to realize that you don't want to be there. So you can take whatever action you need to take. Frustration means you're about to have a breakthrough. I mean, talk about a reframe on frustration, right? So trust that you're exactly where you're supposed to be on this journey that you're on, and lean into it of, okay, what is my why? What is my worth? How can I dream big? It's the, what do I want to do? Why do I want to do it? How am I going to get there? And again, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. So keep being badass. Everyone who's watching and who, of course, this panel, I am confident has that badassery in front of them. So go show it.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies, so very much. Carrie, Christy, Cleo, Colleen, we have all benefited, I know personally, from your insights that you shared today. And I hope the audience enjoyed this as well. So speaking of our community, Today's session was only made possible by our Thrive volunteers. So if you want, please join me in a big shout out to the Thrive Hive. They are ridiculously talented. They're a passionate group of women. They worked incredibly hard to make this happen today. And if any of you in the audience are interested in becoming a volunteer, we'd love to have you. It's an awesome experience and it's a meaningful way to make an impact. Speaking of making an impact, the other way Thrive tries to do this is through our empowerment bundles. So thanks to our sponsors and independent donations, we are now taking applications for both our re-entry and growth empowerment packages, which we will award to deserving women in travel who are in need to either re-enter into our industry or who are looking to grow their careers further. If you're looking or you know someone who would benefit from that, please go to our website and submit your application. We will be awarding these in July. And then also, I want to let you know that the Thrive Match Network program is in full force. It's an ongoing opportunity for you to expand your network. There's a quick sign up through the website. Again, womenintravelthrive.com. This is available, of course, to women, but also men, allies, and anyone interested in networking in our industry. So growing your network, as you've all heard here today, can lead to growth opportunities or mentorships. So please go ahead and check it out today. It's something that's free. And then, of course, I'm thrilled to recognize our sponsors and partners. We are grateful for all of these companies and organizations who are supporting our cause. Speaking of supporting our cause, if you would like, if you like what you saw today at the Thrive organization, there are a number of ways that you too can pay it forward and get involved. We welcome volunteers, new partners to join our cause. So please reach out with any questions. All right, and then finally, I want to let you know that we have one more amazing session today. Later this afternoon in 1 hour, there will be an interview with Jagruti Panwala. She is AHOA's immediate past chairwoman. Jagruti has had an impressive career. She shares some great insights on her journey, and you clearly will not want to miss it. So on that note, thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed today's program. And again, thank you to our badass panels. All right, take care, everybody.
Thank you.